Hate crimes are on the rise, my friends, but I think it might have something to do with everything that hurts a Liberal's feelings being investigated as a hate crime these days. Just look at this from the CBC. The Ottawa Police Hate Crimes Unit is investigating after a man screamed obscenities outside Infrastructure and Communities Minister Catherine McKenna's constituency office last week. A 90-second video posted to social media over the weekend shows a man approaching the door of the Ottawa Centre MP's Catherine Street office around 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time Thursday and ringing the bell. It appears the man recorded the video himself. When a female employee opens the door, the man asks to speak to McKenna, but she tells him the office isn't open to the public due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The man then launches into a profane tirade, at one point calling McKenna a C word, before the woman shuts the door. Now, I want to tell you right off the hop, the C word is not really in my vocabulary, and it's just something I can't even in my most angry moments bring myself to use. The only time I might ever use it, and I would only say the C word and not the actual four-letter word, is if I were to be describing some of the recent things a Liberal or NDPer has called me on Twitter. That's about it. But there's no such thing in the criminal code as a verbal assault. Words are just that, words. And if we're going to get nitpicky, calling someone a dick is the same as using the C word. And yeah, it's kind of a gendered insult, but get over it. It's not a hate crime. McKenna has called people deniers, using the language of Holocaust denial to describe people who are just simply skeptical that taxes may or may not change the weather. And she said she has no time for those Canadians who don't think the same way that she does.
Climate change has huge costs now. I have no time for folks who are like, we shouldn't take action.
McKenna has called the United We Roll convoy xenophobic. Not that she ever bothered to speak to them herself to hear why they had driven thousands of kilometers to Ottawa to have their voices heard by the government and then ignored. And McKenna has called pipeline workers potential rapists when trying to clumsily explain why she had to shoehorn gender analysis into energy projects. Remember this?
Gender impact? How does that fit into a pipeline approval process?
So I'm really glad you asked that, because I think people are like, well, what is this gender thing? Well, imagine that you have a huge number of people going to a remote community, many men. What is the impact on the community? What is the impact on women in the community? And actually, once again, smart proponents understand this. So they're going to put measures in place. That's all it is. It's just taking a smart approach to thinking about, okay, what's going to be the impact of a major development in a particular area?
Okay, that's interesting. All right.
McKenna herself is the Minister for Infrastructure and Name-Calling, and she gives it as good as she gets. Let's not kid ourselves. But the Liberals are using the isolated actions of this one vulgar crank as a tool to shut you up and block any sort of criticism directed at them because, it'll incite more vulgar cranks and then it'll be all your fault. Don't believe me? Just see for yourself. The Liberals used the crank who hollered at McKenna to shut people up the very next day. Look at this exchange.
I would just point out that the type of baseless allegations that Mr. Poilievre keeps making about our government is one of the things that's fueling the type of action that we saw at Minister McKenna's office today. I would beg him to please provide good, constructive criticism when necessary, but the baseless allegations, these assumptions and the rhetoric that there's always a scandal is one of the things that's fueling a lot of the difficulty that people are experiencing. And I would just ask for more truth.
Okay. And the media party, well, they're the shock troops the Liberals are using to shut you up if you criticize anybody they like on the left. Remember when a group of guys got together a few years ago, I think it was 2016, and held a charity golf tournament in central Alberta, and that destroyer premier at the time, Rachel Notley's face was put on a cardboard cutout as a target for golfers? The media went into full misogynistic hate crime mode. The guys who put the golf tournament together were denounced by the government. It was somehow evidence about the potential for violence against female politicians, like we didn't all realize that this was a cardboard cutout, and eventually an insincere apology was wrung out of the poor guy in charge. Now let me show you the media bias playing out right in front of us. Some company right now has an FU Jason Kenney coffee mug for sale. Apparently, 25% of the proceeds of the sale go to provide medical PPE for teachers, which is weird because, you know, the government is actually providing PPE for teachers and students as they go back to school anyway. Now look, I don't care about mugs and I don't care about t-shirts or cardboard cutouts or any of that. Put whatever you want on them. I'm not uptight about this sort of stuff. I only care insofar as it reveals a shameless hypocrisy all around us. Look how the media portrays this when we're talking about a male conservative premier a few years later versus the female socialist one back then. Shocking as it is blunt, a coffee mug directed at Premier Kenney was meant to start a conversation around UCP policies in the province. Can't you see, you guys, it's just a conversation starter, not a vulgar mug. So what's my advice here? I don't know, don't be Peter MacKay tripping over himself to paint these vulgar outbursts as a problem of the masculine-friendly conservative movement. Because it's not. It happens on all sides. Let the Liberals white knight for powerful women who have the entire media and government apparatus in their corner when those women play the victim. And for the rest of you, carry on. Because you didn't do these things. Don't let the media and the Liberals force you to be responsible for them. Sympathizing with the cry bullies does not buy you reprieve from them. We've got more on the cry bullies, this time of the environmental movement. Up next, Robbie Picard from Oil Sands Strong joins me to talk about Cian Bexte's trip to Blue River and the tiny house warrior bullies. Stay with us, more up next after the break.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.